Hello and welcome to the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. It's Wednesday the 20th of August and I'm your host Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO. And on this podcast, I, with the help of a band of marketing chums, share marketing street knowledge that I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. However, this week, no chums, I'm going solo. I got some lovely feedback when I did this last month, and this week I wanted to explore the challenge of building internal influencers and thought leaders, but it's kind of morphed into a general set of observations on marketing into the dark funnel. I hope you like it. But first, I still need to pay the bar tab, so I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back
After this word. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of juggling multiple software tools to manage your agency? Say hello to Deltek Workbook, the ultimate solution for marketing and communication agencies. With Workbook, you can streamline your projects, resources, and finances all in one place. Imagine real-time dashboards and reports giving you full visibility into your projects, people, and financials. Plan your team's capacity weeks in advance to avoid bottlenecks while staying on budget to maximize project margins. Plus, Workbook works perfectly for both agencies and in-house marketing teams looking to boost efficiency and profitability. And here's the best part. At PCI, we're a certified Deltek partner and reseller offering expert implementation, integrations, and ongoing support to ensure your success. Want to see how Deltek Workbook can transform your operations? For a free consultation, visit pci.us/podcast today. That's pci.us/podcast.
When it comes to relevant content, you may have heard Jeff and me talk about the multis on this show. Multi-channel, multi-device, multi-persona, and multi-language. On that last one, let me ask, how confident are you that your content actually connects in every market? You're not sure? Well, it might be time to check out Phrase. In our experience, this stuff used to be hard, but Phrase makes it simple with its industry-leading AI localization platform that helps you deliver content in multiple languages without losing your tone, your message, or your mind. It automates the manual work, slashes review time, and gives you real data on what's working and where. Brands like Uber and Zendesk trust Phrase to scale their content across the globe and get it right every time. If you're serious about reaching more people and driving better results internationally, head over to phrase.com/MPN and take a look. That's phrase.com/MPN. As we're all noticing and chatting about on LinkedIn, digital marketing is changing. And it's not just AI which is sucking all the oxygen out of the room, but the social media networks we've depended on are tweaking their algorithms. Organic performance seems to be declining as big tech seemingly wants to drive us to paid offerings, which themselves are becoming more expensive. Plus, possibly more importantly, with all this information at their fingertips, how B2B buyers research and make their decisions is changing. The old gatekeepers and influencers of traditional analyst firms are declining. Buyers are contacting vendors later in their process, and there is much discussion of this dark funnel. And when it comes to research into possible solutions, the buyers are doing it for themselves. As we've often referred to on this show, research suggests that by the time the buyer is in touch with the vendor, they have their shortlist and a clear idea of the solution they're looking for. I also can't mention the dark funnel without quoting the 95-5 rule from LinkedIn's research that showed that 95% of our potential buyers are not currently in market, but will be. And yet we put all of our focus in the 5%, the hand raisers that have already got a shortlist. When I was coming up through sales, we learned solution selling. A core part of that was re-engineering the vision. And you should see I've got the little air quotes going on. A phrase that still makes me a bit sick in my mouth. But the idea was that as you engage with the prospect, you attempted to shape their view of the problem and steered them towards prioritizing their needs to fit the strengths of your product and highlighting the weakness of your competitors, which is lovely, assuming that the buyer is still in that education phase and their view of the world is wet clay, as it was 2 decades ago. Vendors were an essential source of information to help inform the discovery of the market and best practices, as this information was not otherwise available. Today, that phase is happening without us. The buyer has no need or motivation to contact the vendor during this research phase, and they keep them at arm's length, fearing the sales Jedi mind trick or getting an inbox full of cheesy emails asking them if they've been kidnapped when they don't respond to outreach. So when they arrive as a blip on our marketing automation radar, they are not wet clay. They are mostly baked. Therefore, the battle for the hearts, minds, and wallets of our buyers is happening before we know about them. And of course, this is where our brands and does its work, and our content marketing. This is the dark funnel that I was referring to. However, as we've already established, and let's be honest, they are wary of what a vendor has to say, and that includes our company's thought leadership content. They really want good quality research. They want to hear from real people and be engaged with the story of what the journey will be like for them to reach the promised land of solving their problem. On the research topic, like a lot of B2B marketing commentators, we are constantly banging on about the 6th Sense data on this podcast, who, we should remember, are a vendor. But through investing in good research that they share generously, they seem to have cut through. But you don't need to have such deep pockets as these guys. As I recently worked with an email service provider, and the data that was in their systems, which they could anonymize on things like best time to send, subject lines, and general sort of benchmarking and what good looks like across the markets and the geographies, was hugely helpful for their customers. And more importantly, folks that commentate on this category could use this data, giving the vendor awareness and trust with potential buyers in that dark funnel that I just referred to. Another good example of this is Dream Data, a customer journey analytics type tool. I've used their data in presentations, and I see it quoted often by my peers. If you're a SaaS vendor, you probably have the same, a little treasure trove of data that can help customers. On the topic of the story of what the journey is like to reach the promised land, one of the opportunities we have with our content that I think we miss as we focus on banging on about our features, functions, and benefits is what change will implementing our solution or your solution require for them. How do they manage that? How can you help them with that change? And this could be essential. We all know that the biggest competitor in B2B is do nothing. And I've talked about the fact that everyone is FOFU fighting. FOFU standing for the fear of fucking up. In a world that no longer has the opportunity for the reassuring salesperson to tell them everything is going to be all right in the dark discovery phase, our content needs to be focused on delivering the trust that everything will be all right. So far, I've talked about research and sharing useful content. I also mentioned they want to hear from real people. And of course, when I say real people, customers are the premium grade for this. External influencers next, then your employees, and probably last of all, your company branded materials. Unless, as I say, they really are thought leading and are laced with the good research stuff we were just talking about. The tip here when it comes to customer stories is they can't just be they can't just go along like this. The customer was sad, they had a problem, and then the vendor rode in on a big white horse, saved the day, and all was well in the world. The buyer is looking for something a bit deeper than that, to put themselves into the story. They can see the challenges ahead, the possible pitfalls, and if it's not their first rodeo, they know that implementation and vendor relationships are not all unicorns and rainbows. Showing some of the story's warts here builds credibility and therefore trust. When it comes to external influencers, this again pulls on the research thread. What can you offer them that can help them with their work? Industry analysts get their credibility from being in touch with the market, talking to customers, maybe your customers, and getting industry data. Again, maybe your industry data. How can you help with that? Smaller analysts and influencers are looking for exposure. Can you invite them to speak at your next event? Building internal thought leaders is similar. Each is a mini content marketing project in what's appropriate for their audience in their voice. I started down a rabbit hole of finding research that supports the fact that buyers want to engage with content from people rather than companies, but I gave up because you only need to spend 2 minutes reflecting on your own use of LinkedIn, or if you've ever managed a company LinkedIn page, to know that the algorithms favor content that gets engagement. And it's not going to be a company post about a press release. It'll be a human story. It's what you post, not what your company posts. So on the topic of LinkedIn, there is also a lot of talk about employees having almost an obligation to be cheerleaders for their company's product on that platform. I'm a fan of employee engagement, especially when it helps with hiring and retention. And I love spotlighting employees on the social media. But to create awareness and demand for your product within a buyer community, I'm not so sure it's always appropriate. If I, as a marketer, am working for an industrial aeronautic widget manufacturer, Now, why did I pick that when I wrote this script? My network is of no value to this company. Me banging on about industrial aeronautical widgets is just going to piss off my network and add no value. Of course, I could nurture or find an audience that buys industrial aeronautical widgets, but that would be equally ineffective, as I, a marketer, would not have the engineering gravitas to be trusted on the topic of the efficacy of these widgets. But when I'm working for a MarTech vendor, my network, my credibility is more useful and relevant to that company. It would be the same if you sell a cool doohickey that's no doubt AI powered that helps developers. Having your developers talk about its virtues would be great. Maybe in your category, the marketers or developers are not the right people to talk about your product. But whatever business you're in, there will almost certainly be someone who has the right audience or the potential for you to grow the right audience and profile to develop as an internal influencer and be a credible evangelist and thought leader, a founder, a chief engineer, a former analyst, or practitioner of some kind that will be credible to your audience. This nurturing of our internal thought leaders needs to be guided by our central content marketing strategy. But as I mentioned, it's a sort of mini content marketing project in itself, which includes our ICP, the buyers, their needs, our messaging mapped against those needs, and how this spokesperson can help tell that story. What is it that's relevant for them to talk about in your messaging matrix? The quid pro quo as a marketing team investing in growing someone's personal brand is you're not just adding value to the company's marketing strategy, you're adding value to them as an individual. It gets them excited, gets them engaged. It gives them greater visibility and credibility. But the next obvious question is, of course, what if they leave? You might have built a monster who chooses to escape the castle and terrorize the villagers. Well, we need to be prepared for that with a panel of great thought leaders and maybe some pitchforks. I'm joking about the pitchforks. I just noticed when I have Jeff on the show, I insist we discuss 5 effing things. When it's just me, it's a little less structured. But just some ideas for when you're peering into the dark funnel that I hope you found helpful. Like I said, I was going to focus on one of those, employees as influencers. But when I scripted the setup, I thought I'd better give a broader overview and then maybe dive into some of these strategies and maybe employees as influencers on another episode. So that's a wrap on this solo episode of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. I am a CMO, but not a rockstar, and also managing partner of Velocity B. And you can find me on LinkedIn or all my links in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, or just search Rockstar CMO or Velocity B. I'm sure you'll find me. I'd love to hear from you. But most of all, thanks for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox and jiving along. I'm glad you're here. Coming up for us here on Rockstar CMO, Robert will be back in the bar on Saturday and Jeff is back next Wednesday. So I hope you join us for some of that here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.